Most people spend their lives waiting for something to change. They wait for the right opportunity, the right connection, the right timing, or a stroke of luck that finally shifts everything in their favor. And while they wait, days turn into years. What often goes unnoticed is that the future is quietly being shaped every single day, not by dramatic events, but by small, repeated behaviors. The truth is simple, though not always comfortable: your habits are building your future long before you see the results. Luck feels powerful because it appears sudden. A promotion, a financial breakthrough, a successful business, a healthy body. From the outside, it can look like everything happened overnight. But when you look closely, what seems like luck is often the visible outcome of invisible routines. The person who gets the opportunity was usually preparing long before anyone noticed. The person who looks confident has likely practiced discipline in private for years. The success that looks random is often the product of consistent, boring, repeated actions. Habits are powerful because they remove decision-making from the equation. When something becomes a habit, it no longer requires willpower. You don't debate whether to brush your teeth, you just do it. In the same way, when reading, exercising, saving money, or learning become habits, they stop feeling like effort. They become part of your identity. And identity is what drives long-term outcomes. Think about how most people approach change. They wait for motivation. They wait for a new year, a new month, a new week. They tell themselves that when circumstances improve, they will start behaving differently. But circumstances rarely improve on their own. Habits shape circumstances, not the other way around. If you want a different financial future, your spending and investing habits must change. If you want better health, your daily routines around food and movement must change. If you want deeper relationships, your habits around communication and attention must change. The uncomfortable reality is that luck cannot be controlled. Habits can. And control is where power lives. There's something almost invisible about the way habits accumulate. One day of discipline doesn't seem significant. Skipping one workout doesn't feel disastrous. Eating one unhealthy meal doesn't ruin your health. But habits are not about isolated moments. They are about patterns. And patterns compound. Just like money in an investment account grows through compounding interest, behaviors compound into results. A small habit repeated daily becomes a defining force. 10 minutes of reading every day turns into dozens of books over a year. Saving a small amount consistently builds financial security over time. Practicing a skill regularly leads to mastery that others interpret as talent. What people call talent is often long-term habit in disguise. On the other hand, small negative habits compound just as powerfully. Procrastination becomes lost opportunities. Overspending becomes financial stress. Neglecting health becomes chronic issues. The danger is that negative habits feel harmless in the beginning. Their consequences are delayed. And because the results are delayed, people underestimate their impact. One of the most important insights about habits is that they shape identity. Every repeated action is a vote for the type of person you are becoming. When you choose to wake up early to work on your goals, you reinforce the identity of someone disciplined and focused. When you choose comfort over growth repeatedly, you reinforce a different identity. Over time, identity becomes self-fulfilling. You act in alignment with who you believe you are. This is why relying on luck can feel comforting. If outcomes are random, you are not responsible. If success depends on external forces, failure isn't personal. But the idea that habits decide your future puts responsibility back in your hands. It means your daily choices matter more than you think. It means you are quietly designing your life every single day. There is also a psychological advantage to focusing on habits rather than outcomes. Outcomes are distant. Habits are immediate. If your goal is to become financially independent, that may take years. But your habit of tracking expenses can start today. If your goal is to write a book, that may feel overwhelming. But writing for 30 minutes daily is manageable. Habits bring long-term dreams into the present moment. Another important truth is that discipline often feels heavier at the beginning and lighter over time. When you first try to change a habit, resistance is strong. Your brain prefers familiarity. But once a new behavior becomes routine, it requires less energy. The struggle decreases. Support their goals. They do not rely on motivation. They rely on structure. Structure creates freedom. When your habits are aligned with your goals, you no longer need constant self-control. Your environment and routines carry you forward. Environment plays a quiet but critical role in habit formation. People often underestimate how much their surroundings influence behavior. If unhealthy food is always within reach, willpower alone may not be enough. If distractions are constantly present, focus becomes difficult. Designing your environment to make good habits easier and bad habits harder is a powerful strategy. Small adjustments in surroundings can reduce friction and increase consistency. Another subtle point is that habits build confidence. Confidence does not come from positive thinking alone. It comes from evidence. When you consistently follow through on small commitments to yourself, you start trusting yourself. That trust grows into self-belief, and self-belief changes how you approach opportunities. Suddenly, what once seemed intimidating feels possible. Luck, in contrast, cannot build confidence because it is external. If you attribute success to luck, you don't internalize it. You assume it might not happen again. But when success comes from habit, you know you can repeat the process. That sense of control creates stability. There is also a deeper philosophical layer to this idea. Life is rarely defined by dramatic moments. It is defined by ordinary days repeated. A good life is not built in a single breakthrough. It is built in quiet mornings, consistent effort, and small daily choices. The problem is that ordinary days don't feel important. They feel forgettable, but they are shaping everything. The question then becomes, if habits are so powerful, why don't more people build them intentionally? Often, it's because the rewards are not immediate. Humans are wired for instant gratification. We prefer short-term pleasure over long-term benefit. Breaking that pattern requires awareness. It requires understanding that short-term discomfort often leads to long-term freedom. There is something deeply empowering about realizing that you don't need a miracle to change your life. You don't need extraordinary talent. You don't need perfect timing. You need consistent behavior. The playing field becomes more equal when you focus on habits. Anyone can improve one small action at a time. Yet there's another layer to consider. Not all habits are visible. Mental habits, how you think, how you interpret events, how you respond to setbacks, also shape your future. If you habitually blame circumstances, growth slows. If you habitually reflect and learn, progress accelerates. The way you talk to yourself becomes a pattern that influences decisions. As you begin to examine your own routines, an important realization emerges. The future you imagine is not created by rare events. It is created by repetition. The life you desire will not suddenly appear because conditions changed. It will grow from the systems you build daily. And this leads to a deeper question. If habits truly determine where you end up, how do you intentionally design them in a way that aligns with the life you want? What does it take to break the habits that quietly limit you and replace them with ones that build momentum instead? That is where the real transformation begins. But before you can build better habits, you must first understand why the wrong ones are so difficult to break, and why your brain keeps pulling you back to familiar patterns, even when you know they're holding you back. If habits shape the future so powerfully, then the real question becomes uncomfortable. Why do we cling so tightly to habits that clearly don't serve us? The answer lies deep inside how the human brain is wired. The brain values efficiency more than ambition. It prefers what is familiar over what is beneficial. A familiar routine, even if it produces average or negative results, feels safe. And safety, to the brain, often matters more than growth. Every habit follows a quiet loop. There is a trigger, there is an action, and there is a reward. The reward does not have to be big, it just has to be immediate. When you scroll on your phone after feeling bored, the boredom is the trigger, scrolling is the action, and the small dopamine release is the reward. That tiny reward reinforces the behavior. Over time, the brain builds a shortcut. The moment boredom appears, your hand moves automatically. This is why breaking bad habits feels frustrating. You are not fighting laziness. You are fighting neurological wiring that has been strengthened through repetition. The brain has learned that this pattern provides comfort, and it will resist losing that comfort. But changes. Instead of trying to eliminate habits completely, a smarter strategy is to replace them. Removing a behavior leaves a gap, and the brain dislikes gaps. That's why people who quit one habit often unconsciously replace it with another. If you remove late night scrolling but do not insert a replacement routine, the old habit will quietly return. Real change happens when you redesign the loop. You keep the trigger, you keep the reward, but you change the action in between. For example, if stress is the trigger and relief is the reward, instead of turning to junk food, you could train yourself to take a short walk. The brain still receives relief, but now the behavior supports your future rather than harming it. Another important element is friction. The easier a behavior is, the more likely you are to repeat it. The harder it is, the less likely it becomes. This sounds simple, but it is incredibly powerful. If you want to read more, leave a book visible on your desk. If you want to exercise, keep your workout clothes ready. If you want to reduce phone usage, place your phone in another room while working. These small adjustments reduce friction for good habits and increase friction for bad ones. Most people rely on willpower, but willpower is unreliable. It fluctuates based on energy, stress, and mood. Systems are stronger than motivation. Environment is stronger than intention. There is also something deeper happening beneath habits: identity reinforcement. When you perform a behavior repeatedly, you begin to see yourself differently. When someone exercises regularly, they don't just build muscle, they build the identity of a healthy person. And once identity shifts, behavior becomes easier to maintain. This is why starting small is so critical. Dramatic changes often fail because they attack identity too aggressively. If someone who has never exercised suddenly commits to intense daily workouts, resistance is high. The brain rejects the identity shift. But if the same person starts with 10 minutes of movement daily, the identity begins to shift gradually. It feels believable. Believability matters. The brain accepts small changes more easily than dramatic transformations. Another reason habits stick, both good and bad, is emotional association. If a behavior is linked to pleasure, it repeats. If it is linked to pain, it avoids repetition. The challenge is that short-term pleasure often leads to long-term pain, and short-term discomfort often leads to long-term gain. Training yourself to see beyond immediate emotion is one of the most powerful skills you can develop. When you begin associating discipline with pride instead of restriction, everything changes. When you begin associating procrastination with regret instead of relief, patterns shift. You also have to understand delayed results. Good habits often produce invisible progress for a long time. You might exercise for weeks without dramatic changes. You might save money for months without feeling wealthy. You might study consistently without immediate recognition. This is the critical period where most people quit. They mistake lack of visible progress for lack of effectiveness. But habits operate like seeds underground. Growth is happening before it becomes visible. Roots are forming before branches appear. The problem is not that habits aren't working. The problem is that we expect instant evidence. Patience becomes part of discipline. Another layer to consider is social influence. Humans adapt to their environment not just physically, but socially. If you are surrounded by people who normalize unhealthy habits, it becomes harder to change. If you are surrounded by people who value growth, discipline becomes contagious. You don't always need to change your entire circle, but you need exposure to environments that reinforce who you want to become. Conversations, media consumption, mentors, these shape your mental habits as much as your physical routines. It's also important to remove perfection from the equation. Missing one day does not destroy progress, but missing repeatedly without awareness does. The goal is not flawless execution. The goal is consistency over time. There is a quiet trap many people fall into. They build habits only when they feel motivated. But true habit formation requires action, especially when motivation is low. In fact, those are the moments that strengthen identity the most. When you act despite not feeling like it, you prove something to yourself. That proof builds internal strength. Another important shift is focusing on systems instead of goals. Goals are destinations. Systems are processes. If you focus only on reaching a target, once you reach it, motivation fades. But if you focus on maintaining a system, lose 10 kilograms and stopping there, you focus on maintaining healthy routines permanently. Instead of aiming to read a certain number of books, you focus on becoming someone who reads daily. Systems remove the finish line. They create lifestyle change. Over time, habits compound not just in results, but in momentum. Positive actions create energy. Energy creates further action. Discipline in one area often spills into others. Someone who masters financial habits may begin improving health habits. Someone who strengthens mental discipline may improve relationships. Momentum is powerful, but so is negative momentum. That's why small daily decisions matter more than occasional dramatic efforts. You don't rise to the level of your hopes. You fall to the level of your systems. And this is where the deeper responsibility appears. If your current life is the result of accumulated habits, then changing your life requires changing your daily systems. Not once, not for a week, but consistently. The good news is that you don't need to overhaul everything at once. In fact, that approach often backfires. Change one habit, make it automatic, then build another. Stack them slowly, layer by layer. It's not about intensity, it's about consistency. But even with all this understanding, another challenge appears. What happens when you fail? What happens when old habits resurface? What happens when life disrupts your carefully built routines? Because it will. And how you respond in those moments determines whether habits become permanent or temporary. That's where resilience enters the picture, and that's what we need to explore next. Failure is not the opposite of discipline. In many ways, it is part of it. The real difference between people whose habits shape powerful futures and those who stay stuck is not that one group never slips. It is that one group knows how to recover quickly. Life does not move in straight lines. There will be weeks when energy drops. There will be unexpected stress, illness, emotional setbacks, financial pressure. In those moments, even the strongest routines can shake. And when a habit breaks once, something dangerous happens inside the mind. A quiet voice says, "You've already messed up. It doesn't matter anymore." That voice has ended more progress than failure itself ever could. The real threat is not the mistake. It is the spiral. One missed workout turns into a missed week. One overspending moment becomes a month of careless decisions. One day of procrastination becomes a return to old patterns. Not because the mistake was catastrophic, but because identity was shaken. This is why resilience is more powerful than perfection. When you understand that habits are built over years, you stop expecting flawless execution. You start focusing on speed of recovery. The faster you return to the habit, the less damage the interruption causes. Think of habits like steering a ship. A small deviation does not matter much if corrected quickly, but if ignored, the ship slowly drifts far off course. Most people don't fail because they drift slightly. They fail because they stop steering. There is also something important to understand about emotional setbacks. When life becomes heavy, people instinctively seek comfort, and old habits often represent comfort. They are familiar, they are easy, they require no growth. In difficult times, the brain prioritizes emotional relief over long-term outcomes. This is why building emotional awareness is part of habit mastery. You must recognize your triggers before they control you. When stress rises, when loneliness appears, when boredom creeps in, those are vulnerable moments. If you don't consciously choose your response, your brain will choose the most practiced one. The solution is not to eliminate discomfort. That's impossible. The solution is to build healthy responses to discomfort. Instead of escaping stress through distraction, you might learn to process it through movement, conversation, reflection, or creative work. Instead of numbing boredom, you might channel it into learning or planning. Instead of avoiding fear, you might break the intimidating task into smaller actions. Over time, these alternative responses become your new defaults, but they only become defaults through repetition during difficult moments. Easy days don't strengthen resilience. Challenging days do. Another subtle truth is that habits are deeply connected to self-respect. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, even a small one, you reinforce trust internally. And every time you repeatedly break those promises without correction, self-trust weakens. Self-trust is quiet, but it shapes everything. When you trust yourself, you set bigger goals. So rebuilding habits after failure is not just about productivity. It's about restoring self-respect. A powerful strategy during setbacks is to reduce the scale, not abandon the habit. If you cannot manage a full workout, commit to 5 minutes. If you cannot write for an hour, write a paragraph. If financial pressure is high, save a smaller amount rather than stopping completely. Maintaining the rhythm matters more than maintaining the intensity. Consistency is like a heartbeat. As long as it continues, progress remains alive. Once it stops completely, restarting feels much harder. There is also wisdom in examining why the setback occurred. Not to criticize yourself, but to adjust your system. Was the habit too ambitious? Was the environment working against you? Were you relying too heavily on motivation instead of structure? Failure often reveals flaws in design, and refining your system is part of long-term growth. Another layer of resilience is patience with identity transformation. You may intellectually understand that you are becoming more disciplined, more focused, more capable, but emotionally, old identities linger. There will be moments when you still feel like the person you used to be. This is normal. Identity change is gradual. It is reinforced through accumulated evidence. Every small win adds proof. Every recovery from a setback adds strength. Eventually, the old identity feels distant, but that distance takes time. There is also the danger of comparing your progress to others. When you see someone further ahead, it can create discouragement. But comparison ignores context. You do not see their years of quiet habit building. You only see visible results. The only comparison that truly matters is with your previous self. Are your daily systems stronger than they were 6 months ago? Are your reactions healthier than they were last year? Growth measured internally is more stable than growth measured externally. One of the most powerful mindset shifts is understanding that habits are not restrictions. They are freedoms in disguise. Financial discipline creates freedom from debt. Physical discipline creates freedom from preventable illness. Mental discipline creates freedom from emotional chaos. At first, discipline feels limiting because it removes certain pleasures, but over time, it expands possibilities. Luck, on the other hand, is unpredictable. You cannot build stability around it. You cannot depend on it. But habits create predictable outcomes. They create structure in an uncertain world. And life will always be uncertain. Economic conditions change. Industries evolve. Relationships shift. Health fluctuates. In a world where many variables are outside your control, habits remain one of the few levers you truly hold. This realization is both empowering and demanding. Empowering because it gives you agency. Demanding because it removes excuses. You cannot blame luck for patterns created by repeated choices. But here is something encouraging. You don't need to transform your entire life at once. Massive change often collapses under its own weight. What you need is direction and steady movement. A single strong habit can become a foundation. That foundation can support another. And gradually, your daily routine begins to reflect the future you once imagined. Imagine looking back 5 years from now. The version of you standing there will not be shaped by one lucky break. It will be shaped by thousands of ordinary decisions. Waking up when you didn't feel like it. Saving when spending was tempting. Learning when relaxing was easier. Choosing long-term gain over short-term comfort again and again. That future version of you is being built quietly today. The question is not whether habits shape your destiny. They already are. The real question is whether they are shaping it intentionally or accidentally. And once you truly understand that every small action is a vote for the person you are becoming, you begin to see your days differently. The ordinary moments stop feeling insignificant. They start feeling powerful. But there is still one deeper layer to explore. Even when you build strong habits and learn resilience, how do you align those habits with a meaningful vision? How do you ensure you are climbing the right mountain, not just climbing efficiently? Because discipline without direction can lead to success that feels empty. And that is where the final insight comes in. There is a quiet danger in becoming highly disciplined without ever asking yourself what you are being disciplined for. It is possible to build powerful habits, to wake up early, to work relentlessly, to optimize every hour of the day, and still arrive somewhere that does not feel meaningful. Efficiency alone does not guarantee. Then you must first decide what kind of future is worth building. Otherwise, you may spend years strengthening routines that move you forward, but in the wrong direction. Discipline is a tool. Like any tool, its value depends on how it is used. Many people inherit their goals without questioning them. Society defines success in visible terms: money, status, recognition, titles. And there is nothing wrong with those outcomes. But if they are pursued unconsciously, they can become empty milestones. You reach them and feel strangely unsatisfied, because they were never truly yours. So before refining habits further, it becomes necessary to pause and reflect. What does a meaningful life look like to you? What kind of person do you want to become? Not just what do you want to have, but who do you want to be? When habits are connected to a deeper personal vision, they become lighter. Waking up early is no longer punishment. It becomes alignment. Saving money is no longer restriction. It becomes preparation. Exercising is no longer obligation. It becomes respect for the body that carries you through life. Clarity turns discipline into devotion. This is also where values enter the picture. Values are internal compasses. They determine what feels right, what feels important, what feels worth sacrificing for. If your habits conflict with your values, you will experience constant internal tension. If they align, progress feels natural. For example, if you deeply value family but build habits that consume all your time at work, you may achieve professional growth while feeling personal emptiness. On the other hand, if you design habits that protect time for relationships, even modest career progress may feel satisfying. The key is intentional design. Intentional living does not mean rigid control over every moment. It means conscious awareness of patterns. It means periodically stepping back and asking, are my daily actions reflecting what truly matters to me? Another important insight is that seasons of life change. The habits required in your 20s may not be identical to those required in your 40s or 60s. Early stages may demand aggressive learning and risk-taking. Later stages may require stability, mentorship, or health prioritization. Growth is dynamic. This is why self-awareness must grow alongside discipline. It is easy to become attached to certain routines simply because they once worked. But wisdom involves adjusting systems as life evolves. The core principle remains the same. Small consistent actions shape the future, but the specific actions may shift. There is also a deeper emotional component to aligning habits with vision. When you are clear about your direction, setbacks feel less threatening. They become temporary obstacles rather than identity crises. You know why you are walking the path, so you are less likely to abandon it at the first sign of discomfort. Purpose strengthens persistence. Without purpose, discipline feels like endless effort. With purpose, effort feels meaningful. Another layer worth understanding is balance. Extreme focus on one dimension of life can quietly damage others. Financial habits without attention to health may create wealth but weaken vitality. Health habits without attention to relationships may build strength but create loneliness. Professional habits without inner reflection may create achievement but not peace. The future is not defined by a single outcome. It is shaped by the overall quality of your life. This is why sustainable habits are superior to intense bursts of change. A balanced routine that you can maintain for decades is more powerful than an extreme routine you can sustain for months. Long-term thinking protects you from burnout. There is wisdom in building habits that support energy rather than drain it. Sleep, nutrition, movement, reflection, these are foundational. They are not glamorous, but they support everything else. Without energy, even the best intentions collapse. At the same time, growth requires discomfort. The balance lies in choosing discomfort that leads somewhere meaningful rather than stress that simply exhausts you. Productive discomfort stretches you. Destructive stress depletes you. Learning to distinguish between the two is part of maturity. As your habits strengthen and align with your values, something subtle begins to happen. Confidence becomes quiet and stable. You no longer chase validation because your daily actions already confirm who you are becoming. You trust the process because you see its steady results. Luck, in this context, loses its emotional power. You no longer wait for it. If opportunity appears, you are prepared. If it doesn't, you continue building. Preparation makes you resilient to randomness. Years of invisible structure. And even if dramatic opportunity never arrives, a life built on intentional habits rarely feels wasted. It feels steady. It feels earned. It feels aligned. At the end of the day, your future is not something that suddenly arrives. It is something that quietly accumulates. Every morning routine, every financial decision, every response to stress, every hour spent learning or wasting, they stack. 5 years from now, you will either experience the compounded effect of disciplined habits or the compounded effect of neglected ones. The direction is rarely dramatic day to day, but over time, it becomes undeniable. So the focus shifts from hoping for better circumstances to designing better systems, from waiting for motivation to building structure, from chasing outcomes to strengthening identity, from blaming luck to accepting responsibility. Responsibility is heavy at first, but it becomes liberating. Because once you accept that habits decide your future, you also accept that you have influence over that future. You may not control the economy. You may not control global events. You may not control every opportunity, but you control how you prepare. You control how you respond. You control the small decisions repeated daily. And those small decisions, almost invisible in the moment, are quietly shaping the person you are becoming. The most powerful realization is this: you are already building your future, whether consciously or unconsciously. The only question is whether you will design it deliberately. When you wake up tomorrow, the choice will not feel dramatic. It will feel ordinary. But ordinary choices, repeated long enough, create extraordinary differences. And that is where your power truly lies. If you step back and look at your life as a long timeline instead of a collection of random days, something becomes very clear. The big turning points are rare. The quiet routines are constant. And in the end, it is the constant that wins. Most people underestimate how ordinary the path to an extraordinary life really is. They imagine dramatic breakthroughs, bold moves, sudden shifts. But the truth is calmer than that. It is slower. It is less exciting in the moment. And yet it is far more reliable. A person who reads a little every day does not feel transformed after a week. But after 10 years, their thinking is deeper. Their conversations are sharper. Their decisions are wiser. A person who invests small amounts consistently may not feel wealthy early on. But time turns consistency into freedom. A person who trains their body 3 or 4 times a week does not wake up one morning completely different. But slowly, their energy rises, their posture changes, their confidence strengthens. These transformations are almost invisible while they are happening. That is why many people quit too early. They look for immediate validation. They want proof that their effort matters. But habits are not loud. They work quietly in the background. There is a certain maturity required to commit to what does not immediately reward you. When you truly accept that habits decide your future, your relationship with time changes. You stop thinking in days and start thinking in years. You stop chasing fast results and start building foundations. You begin asking a different kind of question. Instead of asking, "What do I feel like doing today?" you ask, "What would the person I want to become do today?" That shift alone can redirect an entire life. It removes emotion from decision making. Not completely, but enough to prevent self-sabotage. Feelings will always fluctuate. Some days you will feel driven. Other days you will feel distracted or tired. If your actions depend entirely on how you feel, your progress will be inconsistent. But if your actions are tied to identity and long-term direction, feelings become less powerful. This does not mean ignoring emotions. It means not allowing temporary moods to dictate permanent outcomes. Another powerful realization is that discipline is a form of self-respect. When you honor your commitments to yourself, you send a message internally that your goals matter. Over time, this builds quiet confidence. You walk differently when you know you follow through. You speak differently when you trust your own word. And this confidence is not loud. It does not need to prove itself. It is grounded. There is also peace in knowing that you are building your life deliberately. When challenges come, and they always will, you are not starting from zero. You have structure. You have routines. You have mental strength developed through repeated small acts of discipline. These become anchors in uncertain times. Think about how fragile a life built purely on luck would be. If relationships nurtured consistently, it becomes more stable. Stability is underrated. In a world obsessed with fast growth and visible success, stability feels boring. But stability is what allows growth to continue without collapse. It is what allows you to sleep peacefully at night. As you move forward, you may notice something interesting. The more consistent your habits become, the less you think about them. They integrate into who you are. You no longer debate whether to do them. They simply happen. And this frees mental energy for bigger creative thinking, deeper relationships, more meaningful pursuits. In this way, habits create freedom rather than restriction. There is also a ripple effect that often goes unnoticed. When you improve your habits, you influence the people around you, not through preaching or forcing advice, but through example. Discipline is visible. Calm confidence is visible. Consistency is visible. And it inspires more than words ever could. Children observe it. Friends notice it. Colleagues respect it. Over years, your habits do not only shape your future, they shape your legacy. At some point, you will look back and realize that your life was not changed by one lucky break. It was shaped by thousands of small decisions made when no one was watching. The mornings you chose focus over distraction. The evenings you chose growth over comfort. The moments you recovered quickly instead of giving up. Those choices compound into identity. That identity compounds into outcomes. And perhaps the most empowering part of this entire idea is that it places the steering wheel back in your hands. You do not need to control everything. You do not need to predict the future perfectly. You only need to control your next small action. That is manageable. You do not build a strong body in a day. You do not build wealth in a month. You do not build character in a single test. But you can choose today's behavior. And tomorrow, you can choose again and again. Eventually, the repetition becomes your story. There will always be people who attribute success to luck. It is easier. It removes responsibility. But deep down, you will know the truth. You will know the hours of preparation, the repeated routines, the quiet sacrifices. And that knowledge creates a kind of fulfillment that luck can never provide. Because when something is earned through discipline, it feels different. It feels stable. It feels deserved. So as you move forward from here, do not look for dramatic changes overnight. Look at your daily structure. Examine your routines. Identify one small habit that aligns with the person you want to become. Strengthen it. Protect it. Let it become automatic. Then add another. Over time, you will notice that your life no longer feels accidental. It feels intentional. Your future is not waiting somewhere in the distance, hoping for good fortune. It is being quietly constructed in the background of your ordinary days. And the most powerful realization of all is this: you are already shaping it. Whether consciously or unconsciously, whether carefully or carelessly, you are building it. So build it with awareness. Build it with patience. Build it with habits that reflect the future you truly want. Because in the end, luck may open a door once in a while, But habits are the ones that determine whether you are ready to walk through it, and whether you can stay inside once you do. Before we close this journey, there is one final truth that often goes unspoken. Building strong habits is not just about achieving more. It is about becoming someone you can respect in private. Long before results show up in the external world, something shifts internally. When you consistently choose discipline over impulse, clarity over distraction, long-term gain over short-term pleasure, you begin to feel different about yourself. There is less guilt, less internal conflict, less regret at the end of the day. That internal alignment is one of the greatest rewards of all. Many people chase success thinking it will bring peace. But peace often comes first, through orderly living, through intentional habits, through knowing you did what needed to be done even when no one was watching. Success built without inner stability feels fragile. Success built on disciplined habits feels grounded. And here is something even deeper. Habits do not just shape what you achieve, they shape how you experience life. Two people can have similar incomes, similar careers, similar opportunities, and yet experience completely different levels of fulfillment. One lives reactively, constantly stressed, distracted, overwhelmed. The other lives proactively, guided by routines that protect time, energy, and attention. The difference is not luck. It is struck deeply and enjoy the present moment. In other words, habits do not just prepare you for the future, they improve the quality of today. There is also a spiritual dimension to all of this, even if you do not define it in religious terms. Repetition shapes character. Character shapes destiny. The kind of person you repeatedly practice being eventually becomes who you are. If you practice patience, you become patient. If you practice focus, you become focused. If you practice integrity, you become trustworthy. Character is not built in grand moral tests. It is built in small, daily decisions. This means that even when no dramatic success is visible, growth is still happening beneath the surface. You are becoming stronger, steadier, more self-aware. That internal evolution is often more valuable than external milestones. Another important point is that discipline does not remove joy from life. It refines it. When your habits are aligned with your values, enjoyment becomes deeper. Rest feels earned rather than guilty. Spending feels intentional rather than impulsive. Time with loved ones feels present rather than distracted. You begin to enjoy simple things more because your mind is not constantly burdened by unfinished responsibilities. In a strange way, habits create freedom not by giving you more options, but by removing unnecessary ones. You no longer waste energy debating the same decisions repeatedly. You already know who you are. You already know what you do. That clarity simplifies life. And simplicity brings peace. As years pass, this way of living compounds beyond money or achievement. It compounds into reputation. People begin to describe you in certain ways. Reliable, calm, consistent, disciplined, focused. These descriptions are not formed in a single moment. They are formed by observing your patterns over time. Your reputation becomes an extension of your habits, and opportunities often flow toward reliability. Trust is built on consistency. When others know you follow through, they feel safe collaborating with you, investing in you, depending on you. Once again, what looks like luck from the outside is often the natural result of long-term consistency. There will still be uncertainty. There will still be moments of doubt. Even the most disciplined individuals question themselves at times. But strong habits act as anchors during those moments. When emotions fluctuate, routines remain. When confidence dips, structure supports you. That stability is priceless. As you look ahead, it is helpful to remember that you do not need dramatic reinvention. You need alignment. If your daily actions are even slightly better than they were yesterday, and you sustain that over years, the difference becomes extraordinary. Small shifts, repeated long enough, rewrite entire life stories. You may not control where you were born. You may not control certain circumstances, but you control how you respond. You control how you prepare. You control how you grow from experiences rather than being defined by them. That control is quiet, but it is powerful. And perhaps the most comforting realization is this: you do not have to be perfect to build a meaningful future. You only need to be consistent more often than you are careless. Progress does not require flawless days. It requires steady intention. Every morning offers a reset. Every decision offers a vote. Every routine either strengthens or weakens the future you are moving toward. If you ever feel overwhelmed by how far you still have to go, return to the present moment. Ask yourself what the next right action is. Not the next 100 steps, just the next one. then repeat. Over time, you will look back and realize that the life you once hoped for did not arrive because of a miracle. It arrived because you built it patiently, habit by habit, day by day. Luck may influence moments, but habits shape decades, and decades are what define a life. So walk forward calmly, build slowly, adjust when necessary, recover when you slip. Stay aligned with what matters to you, because your future is not an accident waiting to happen. It is a construction project already in progress, and every small, disciplined action you take from this point onward is another brick laid in the direction of the life you truly want. There comes a point in life when you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What am I building every day?" without realizing it. That shift in perspective changes everything. It moves you from passive waiting to active design. It makes you realize that your future is not something that arrives randomly, it is something that accumulates quietly beneath. You notice how you speak to yourself after a mistake. These small patterns, repeated over years, create outcomes far more powerful than isolated decisions ever could. The reason habits matter so deeply is because they operate even when you are not thinking about them. They are automatic. And what is automatic shapes your life more than what is occasional. A single burst of motivation cannot compete with a system that runs daily. That is why the people who seem stable, grounded, and quietly successful are rarely driven by excitement alone. They are driven by structure. They have routines that protect their priorities. They have rituals that anchor their focus. They do not rely on emotion to carry them forward. And this is important because emotions are temporary. Some days you feel strong. Other days you feel tired, distracted, discouraged. If your progress depends on your mood, it will always be fragile. But if your progress depends on habits, it becomes steady. Steadiness is underestimated. It is not flashy. It does not attract attention immediately. But over years, it builds results that look almost unbelievable to others. Imagine two individuals starting from the same place. One relies on inspiration. When motivation is high, they work intensely. When it fades, they pause. The other relies on habit. They work at a moderate pace, consistently, regardless of mood. After a decade, the difference between them will not be small. It will be massive. Not because one was more talented, not because one was luckier, but because one built momentum that never stopped. Momentum is one of the most powerful forces in personal growth. Once you create it, it carries you forward. Each completed action makes the next one easier. Each small success reinforces confidence, and confidence fuels further action. But momentum can work in the opposite direction too. Repeated avoidance builds hesitation. Repeated procrastination builds doubt. Over time, inaction becomes a habit just as powerful as discipline. This is why awareness is the starting point of change. You must become conscious of what you are reinforcing daily. Are you reinforcing courage or avoidance? Growth or comfort? Responsibility or excuse? The beautiful part is that change does not require dramatic transformation. It begins with interruption. Interrupting one negative pattern. Replacing one careless reaction with a thoughtful one. Protecting one small block of time each day for something meaningful. You do not need to rebuild your entire life overnight. In fact, that rarely works. What works is consistency applied to small areas, gradually expanding. Another important truth is that your habits influence not only your external results but your internal narrative. The story you tell yourself about who you are is shaped by your actions. If you repeatedly follow through, you begin to see yourself as dependable. If you repeatedly quit, you begin to see yourself as inconsistent. That self-image quietly controls future behavior. When someone believes they are disciplined, they act accordingly. When someone believes they lack discipline, they often confirm that belief. So every habit is not just shaping your results, it is shaping your identity. And identity is powerful. If you see yourself as someone who takes care of their health, skipping workouts feels unnatural. If you see yourself as someone who manages money wisely, impulsive spending feels uncomfortable. If you see yourself as someone who learns continuously, wasting hours mindlessly feels out of alignment. That discomfort becomes your ally. It keeps you on track without constant force. There is also an important long-term perspective to hold. Life is not a short sprint. It is a long journey. And habits are sustainable tools for long journeys. Intensity burns out. Discipline sustains. In the beginning, building habits feels deliberate. You have to think about them. You have to push yourself. But over time, they become integrated. They stop feeling like effort and start feeling like lifestyle. When that happens, growth feels natural rather than forced. Another powerful realization is that habits protect you during uncertain times. When circumstances change, when challenges appear, your routines provide stability. They give you something steady to hold on to. Even if external progress slows, internal discipline remains. This is especially important because life will test you. Plans will fail. Unexpected problems will arise. But if you have built habits of reflection, learning, saving, exercising, and emotional regulation, you are better prepared to handle disruption. Preparation reduces fear. Luck may open opportunities, but preparation determines whether you can handle them. Many people receive opportunity, full progress that lasts. Over years, this way of living produces something deeper than success. It produces self-mastery, the ability to guide your own impulses, the ability to delay gratification, the ability to choose long-term gain over short-term comfort. Self-mastery creates freedom. When you control your habits, you control your direction. And direction is what separates drifting from building. If you drift long enough, life feels accidental. If you build long enough, life feels intentional. That feeling of intentional living is powerful. It reduces regret. It reduces the feeling of wasted potential. Even if you do not achieve every ambitious goal, you know you moved with purpose. You know you showed up consistently. At the end of a decade, that knowledge matters more than isolated achievements. Because what truly defines a life is not one lucky moment. It is a pattern of discipline, a pattern of growth, a pattern of resilience, a pattern of alignment with values. And patterns are built daily. So as you move forward from here, the focus does not need to be dramatic. It does not need to be overwhelming. It simply needs to be consistent. Choose habits that reflect the person you want to become. Strengthen them patiently. Protect them during difficult seasons. Adjust them as life evolves. Then trust the compounding effect. Years from now, someone may look at your life and say you were fortunate. They may see the results and assume things came easily. But you will know the truth. You will know that what looked like luck was actually structure. What looked like talent was repetition. What looked like sudden success was long-term consistency finally becoming visible. And perhaps that is the most empowering realization of all. Your future is not decided by chance. It is decided by what you repeatedly choose to do, especially when no one is watching. As you reach this point, everything becomes simpler than it first appeared. Not easier, but clearer. The idea that habits decide your future is no longer just motivational language. It becomes a practical lens through which you can evaluate your entire life. You start to see that success and failure are rarely dramatic events. They are trends. They are directions. And direction is nothing more than repeated behavior over time. If you improve just 1% in a meaningful area and sustain it, the gap between who you were and who you become over years becomes extraordinary. But if you decline slightly and repeat that decline, the distance grows in the opposite direction. Time amplifies whatever you consistently do. This is why awareness is power. Once you understand that every repeated action is shaping your trajectory, you stop dismissing small choices as insignificant. You begin to treat them with respect. Not fear, not pressure, just respect. Respect for the morning routine that sets the tone for your day. Respect for how you spend your evenings. Respect for what you consume mentally, conversations, media, thoughts. Respect for how you handle frustration. Because each of these is a vote, and votes accumulate. One of the most freeing realizations is that you do not need to control outcomes directly. Outcomes are often delayed and influenced by many variables, but habits are within reach. You can control whether you show up. You can control whether you practice. You can control whether you save, learn, reflect, move, and improve, even slightly. That sense of control reduces anxiety about the future. When people rely on luck, the future feels uncertain and fragile. When people rely on habits, the future feels under construction. It feels active. It feels guided. And here is something important to understand. Discipline is not about being harsh with yourself. It is about being aligned with yourself. It is about acting in ways that your future self will thank you for. If you imagine meeting yourself 10 years from now, what would that version of you appreciate? Consistent learning? Financial responsibility? Emotional maturity? Physical strength? Deeper relationships? Whatever the answer is, your habits today are either supporting or sabotaging that future meeting. This perspective shifts decision-making from short-term emotion to long-term respect. Another powerful shift happens when you stop trying to change everything at once. When you accept that transformation is layered, patience increases. You build one solid routine, then another, then another. Over time, your life becomes structured in a way that naturally supports growth. And structure is not restriction. It is support. Think of it like building a house. The structure allows freedom inside it. Without structure, there is chaos. With structure, as years pass, you may notice something interesting. The effort you once struggled with becomes effortless. The discipline you once forced becomes automatic. The person you once tried to become becomes who you are. At that point, the idea of luck feels almost irrelevant. Because whether opportunity appears or not, you are prepared. Whether recognition comes or not, you are growing. Whether conditions are perfect or imperfect, you are steady. Steadiness is rare, and it is powerful. It allows you to navigate both success and failure without extreme swings. It protects you from arrogance when things go well and from despair when things go poorly. Your habits become your anchor. And perhaps the greatest gift of this mindset is peace. Peace in knowing that you are not drifting. Peace in knowing that even if progress feels slow, it is happening. Peace in knowing that your future is not left entirely to chance. If you ever feel overwhelmed by the long road ahead, return to something simple. Ask yourself what one small action today aligns with the person you want to become. Then do it. Do it calmly. Do it without drama. Do it without announcing it. Then repeat tomorrow. That is how futures are built. Not through sudden miracles. Not through lucky accidents. But through deliberate repetition. Years from now, when you look back, you will not remember every routine. You will not remember every disciplined morning. But you will live inside their results. Your health will reflect them. Your finances will reflect them. Your relationships will reflect them. Your character will reflect them. And in that moment, you will understand something deeply satisfying. You did not wait for luck. You did not blame circumstances endlessly. You took ownership of your daily actions. And ownership compounds. So move forward without rushing, without comparing, without demanding instant proof. Trust the quiet power of consistent habits. Because while luck may influence moments, habits shape lifetimes. And lifetimes are built one ordinary day at a time. By now, the idea should feel settled in your mind like a steady truth rather than a motivational slogan. Habits are not small. They are not secondary. They are not optional details in the story of your life. They are the story. When you zoom out far enough, life is simply a collection of repeated days. And repeated days are nothing more than routines. Playing out again and again. If those routines are careless, the outcome is predictable. If they are intentional, the outcome is also predictable. That is both the warning and the opportunity. The warning is simple. If you do not consciously choose your habits, they will be chosen for you. Your environment will shape them. Your social circle will shape them. Your fears and comforts will shape them. And before you realize it, years will pass under patterns you never intentionally designed. The opportunity is equally simple. You can take control at any moment. No matter where you are starting from, no matter how inconsistent the past has been, today is neutral. Today does not demand perfection. It only demands direction. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing they need a dramatic turning point to change. They wait for a crisis. They wait for rock bottom. They wait for a life event to force transformation. But waiting for pain to create discipline is unnecessary. You can choose discipline before crisis demands it. That choice alone separates reactive living from proactive living. Proactive living means you act before consequences arrive. You save before financial pressure forces you. You strengthen your health before illness demands attention. You develop skills before opportunity appears. You nurture relationships before distance creates regret. This kind of living feels quiet. It does not generate applause. But over time, it builds a life that feels secure and self-directed. And here is something powerful to remember. You do not need to see the entire path to start walking. You only need clarity about the next right habit, the next right routine, the next right adjustment. Too many people become paralyzed by the size of their goals. They think about the mountain instead of the step in front of them. But mountains are climbed through repeated small steps, not giant leaps. When you focus on habits, you shrink overwhelming ambitions into manageable actions. You stop thinking about the end result constantly and start thinking about the system that produces it. And systems, once established, carry you forward even when motivation fades. There is also a deeper emotional freedom that comes from living this way. When you are consistent, few things are more painful than knowing you could have done more but repeatedly chose not to. Habits protect you from that regret. They create a buffer between intention and disappointment. Another important truth is that progress built on habits is sustainable. It does not require constant external validation. You are not chasing approval. You are building quietly. That quiet building creates internal strength. Over time, that strength becomes visible in subtle ways. You respond more calmly under pressure. You think more clearly before reacting. You manage resources more responsibly. You handle success with humility and setbacks with perspective. These are not random traits. They are cultivated behaviors. And once cultivated, they compound. At some point, people may begin to ask you how you achieved certain results. They may assume you had special advantages. They may attribute your progress to timing or connections. But you will understand that what truly made the difference was repetition. Repetition of discipline. Repetition of learning. Repetition of patience. Repetition of self-correction. You corrected yourself quickly when you drifted. You returned to your systems when you slipped. You adjusted instead of quitting. That pattern of returning is more powerful than never failing. Because in a long life, failure is inevitable. Quitting is optional. And this is perhaps the final layer of understanding. Habits are not about becoming rigid or mechanical. They are about becoming reliable to yourself. They are about reducing chaos and increasing clarity. They are about designing a life that reflects your values rather than your impulses. Impulses are temporary. Values are enduring. When habits align with values, life feels coherent. Your actions make sense. Your direction feels stable. And even when you do not have everything figured out, you trust the path you are building. That trust is powerful. It removes desperation. It replaces anxiety with steady effort. It allows you to focus on what you can control instead of obsessing over what you cannot. Luck will always exist in some form. Timing matters. Circumstances matter. But they are variables, not foundations. Habits are foundations. And foundations determine whether a structure stands strong when conditions change. So as you step forward from here, carry this understanding with calm confidence. You do not need to rush. You do not need to prove anything immediately. You do not need to wait for a perfect moment. You simply need to choose your patterns wisely. Choose the habits that reflect discipline over distraction, growth over stagnation, responsibility over excuse, long-term peace over short-term comfort. Then protect those habits patiently. Years from now, when you observe your life, you will see the evidence, not in a single lucky break, not in one dramatic achievement, but in the overall direction of your character, your stability, your opportunities, your peace of mind. You will see that your future was never an accident. It was built. And it was built in the quiet, ordinary moments when you chose to act intentionally instead of randomly. That is the real power. Habits decide your future. And every new day gives you another chance to decide which future you are quietly constructing. At the very end of this reflection, everything comes back to something incredibly simple, almost humble in its simplicity. Your life is not shaped in the spotlight. It is shaped in private, not in the moments when everyone is watching, not in the rare opportunities that feel dramatic, but in the quiet decisions no one else sees. The choice to wake up when the alarm rings, the choice to sit down and focus instead of scrolling, the choice to save instead of spend, the choice to listen instead of react, the choice to move your body when it would be easier to stay still. These moments look small, they feel small, but they are not small. Over time, they form patterns. Patterns form identity. Identity forms destiny. When people talk about luck, they often focus on events. But events are brief. Habits are ongoing. An event might open a door, but habits determine whether you are prepared to walk through it, and whether you can stay there once you enter. Preparation is invisible. That is why it is so often mistaken for luck. There is something deeply empowering about realizing that you do not need to control everything to create a meaningful life. You only need to control what repeats. You do not need to predict every opportunity. You only need to prepare consistently. You do not need to guarantee outcomes. You only need to guarantee effort. Effort, repeated long enough, reshapes circumstances. And here is the truth many people avoid: inaction is also a habit. Delay is a habit. Your future without your permission. That is why awareness is so critical. When you become aware of what you are repeating daily, you regain control. You stop drifting. You start steering. Steering does not mean moving fast. It means moving intentionally. You may not see dramatic changes this week. You may not feel transformed this month. But if you stay consistent, one day you will look around and realize your life feels different. Your mind feels sharper. Your finances feel more stable. Your body feels stronger. Your relationships feel deeper. Not because of luck, but because of accumulated discipline. There is also something peaceful about living this way. When you trust your habits, you stop chasing constant motivation. You stop relying on bursts of inspiration. You simply follow your structure. You show up. You do the work. You adjust when necessary. And you repeat. Repetition becomes your ally rather than your enemy. And over years, something profound happens. The gap between who you once were and who you are becomes undeniable. You begin to embody the qualities you once admired in others: calmness, stability, confidence, reliability, focus. You realize those traits were never gifts reserved for the lucky. They were built through repeated behavior. This realization removes envy. It removes helplessness. It replaces them with responsibility and possibility. Because if habits built your current reality, new habits can build a different one. No dramatic reinvention required. Just daily alignment. It is also important to understand that this journey is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming intentional. There will still be mistakes. There will still be lazy days. There will still be setbacks. But when your overall pattern is disciplined, occasional imperfection does not derail you. Consistency does not mean never falling. It means always returning. And that return, that decision to come back to your chosen habits again and again, is where real strength lives. As you move forward, you do not need to remember every idea discussed here. Just remember the core principle. What you repeat, you become. What you practice daily, you embody. What you ignore, you weaken. Time will pass regardless. The only question is what you will compound during that time. Will you compound growth or stagnation? Discipline or distraction? Responsibility or excuse? Stability or chaos? Every day gives you another opportunity to answer, and that is the quiet beauty of it all. The future is not fixed. It is flexible. It bends in the direction of your habits. So choose them carefully, build them patiently, protect them during difficult seasons, refine them as you grow. Do not wait for perfect conditions. Do not wait for luck to rescue you. Do not wait for external validation to begin. Begin where you are. Strengthen one small habit, then another. Let them stack. Let them compound. Let them quietly transform you. Years from now, when you reflect on your life, you will not remember most of the ordinary days, but you will live inside their results. And you will understand, deeply and without doubt, that your future was never determined by chance. It was determined by what you chose to do, repeatedly, when no one else was paying attention. That is the power you hold, and that power is available to you every single day. If there is one final layer to understand, it is this: habits do not just build success, they build meaning. Many people chase improvement with tension in their minds. They think discipline must feel heavy. They assume growth must feel exhausting. But when habits are built patiently and aligned with who you truly want to become, they stop feeling like pressure. They start feeling like purpose. Purpose is not found in one grand mission statement. It is found in daily alignment. When your actions match your values, even small days feel meaningful. Even quiet progress feels satisfying. You go to sleep at night knowing you did not betray your own potential. That inner alignment is powerful. It creates a calm kind of confidence, not loud, not arrogant, but steady. And this steadiness changes how you move through life. You stop chasing shortcuts because you understand that shortcuts often create fragile outcomes. You stop comparing timelines because you understand that growth compounds differently for everyone. You stop blaming luck because you recognize that your daily behavior has more influence than random events ever will. The world will always have uncertainty. Markets rise and fall. Opportunities appear and disappear. Circumstances shift. But your habits are your constant. They are the one asset you carry everywhere. If you move to a new city, your habits move with you. If you change career, it comes from self-mastery. From knowing that regardless of what happens externally, you have trained yourself to respond with discipline, patience, and clarity. Over time, this becomes your greatest advantage. People often look for advantages in external tools, better connections, better resources, better timing. But the most durable advantage is internal structure. When you have trained yourself to show up consistently, you become dependable. And dependability attracts trust. Trust builds opportunities. And those opportunities, again, may look like luck from the outside. But you will know they are the natural consequence of years of preparation. There is also something beautiful about the humility of habit building. It keeps you grounded. You do not become obsessed with sudden breakthroughs. You focus on what you can control today. You measure progress in consistency, not applause. That humility protects you from pride when things go well and from despair when they do not. It keeps you steady. And steadiness, over decades, is powerful beyond imagination. At some point, you may notice that the very things that once felt difficult have become part of your nature. Waking up early no longer feels like discipline. It feels normal. Saving money no longer feels restrictive. It feels responsible. Exercising no longer feels like a chore. It feels necessary. You have changed, not through one dramatic decision, but through repetition. This is how real transformation works. It is subtle. It is gradual. It is almost invisible while it is happening. But one day, you look back and realize you are no longer the same person. That realization is deeply satisfying. Not because you outperformed others. Not because you were lucky, but because you were consistent. And consistency is accessible to anyone willing to practice it. There is no special background required. No extraordinary talent needed. No perfect starting point demanded. Just daily commitment to small, meaningful actions. If you ever feel discouraged, remember this: time is always moving. The question is whether it is working for you or against you. When you align your habits with growth, time becomes your ally. It multiplies your effort. It rewards your patience. It strengthens your foundation. When you neglect your habits, time quietly compounds that neglect as well. So the real decision is not about chasing success. It is about choosing your direction and letting time amplify it. That is the power of habits. They turn ordinary days into extraordinary outcomes. They turn effort into identity. They turn preparation into opportunity. They turn discipline into freedom. And perhaps most importantly, they turn responsibility into empowerment. You are not a passenger in your own life. You are the builder. Every routine you protect is a brick. Every small improvement is reinforcement. Every return after failure is repair. Over years, those bricks become a structure strong enough to withstand uncertainty and flexible enough to grow with you. And when someone asks how you built the life you now live, the answer will not be dramatic. It will be simple. You showed up. You repeated what mattered. You refined your systems. You trusted the process. You did not wait for luck. You built habits. And those habits built your future. When everything is finally stripped down to its core, what remains is not complexity. It is choice. Every day, quietly and without announcement, you are choosing the direction of your life. Not in giant, cinematic moments. Not in lifetime opportunities. But in the smallest, most ordinary decisions that barely seem important at the time. That is where the real power has always been. It is easy to believe that life changes in dramatic bursts. A big promotion. A new business. A sudden breakthrough. But those visible milestones are only the surface. Beneath them lies something far less glamorous and far more consistent: repeated behavior. The future is not built in leaps. It is built in layers. Layer by layer, your routines shape your capabilities. Your capabilities shape your confidence. Your confidence shapes your decisions. And your decisions shape your reality. Once you truly understand this chain, you stop underestimating small actions. You stop saying, "It doesn't matter today." Because today always matters. Not because it must be perfect. Not because it must be extraordinary. But because it participates in a pattern. And patterns decide outcomes. Think of your life as a long investment. Every disciplined action is a deposit. Every careless repetition is a withdrawal. The balance may not feel dramatic at first, but over years, the difference becomes undeniable. And here is something comforting: the old cycle. It may feel small at first. It may feel almost insignificant. But small shifts, protected consistently, rewrite trajectories. It is not about speed. It is about direction. You do not need to outrun everyone else. You do not need to reinvent yourself overnight. You only need to make sure your daily behavior aligns with the future you would be proud to live. Pride, in its healthiest form, does not come from comparison. It comes from integrity. From knowing that your actions reflect your intentions. From knowing that you are not wasting your potential out of laziness or fear. There is something deeply peaceful about living with that integrity. When you build habits aligned with growth, you remove much of the internal conflict that drains energy. You are no longer negotiating with yourself constantly. You are no longer promising change tomorrow. You are simply acting today. And that action builds self-trust. Self-trust is quiet but life-changing. When you trust yourself, you take bigger steps. You accept greater responsibility. You aim higher. Not because you are reckless, but because you know you will follow through. This is how confidence truly forms. Not from affirmations. Not from temporary success. But from evidence, repeated proof that you do what you say you will do. Over time, that evidence becomes undeniable. It strengthens your posture, your speech, your presence. You begin to carry yourself differently. And people respond to that difference. Again, from the outside, it may look like timing or luck. But inside, you know it was built deliberately. You know it was built on days when motivation was low but you showed up anyway. On evenings when distraction was easy but you chose focus. On moments when comfort was tempting but you chose growth. Those moments stack. And stacking is powerful. As the years pass, the stacking becomes visible not only in achievements but in stability. In calm decision-making. In thoughtful responses instead of impulsive reactions. In steady financial growth. In durable relationships. In physical resilience. All of it traces back to what was repeated. And this realization changes how you see every single day moving forward. You no longer see a random Tuesday. You see an opportunity to reinforce who you are becoming. You no longer see small habits as chores. You see them as investments. You no longer wait for luck to improve your circumstances. You improve your habits, knowing circumstances will eventually follow. Because they do. Maybe not instantly. Maybe not dramatically. But inevitably. The law of repetition is patient, but it is powerful. If you repeat discipline, discipline shapes you. If you repeat distraction, distraction shapes you. If you repeat responsibility, responsibility strengthens you. If you repeat avoidance, avoidance weakens you. Time does not judge which one you choose. It simply multiplies it. And that is the final clarity. Your future is not hidden somewhere beyond your control. It is being quietly assembled in your daily routines. Brick by brick, layer by layer, decision by decision. You are not waiting for your life to begin. It is already unfolding through what you repeatedly practice. So move forward with calm determination. Choose habits that reflect your highest standards. Protect them when motivation fades. Adjust them when life evolves. Return to them when you stumble. And trust that over months and years, the compounding effect will carry you further than luck ever could. Because in the end, luck may influence a moment, but habits decide a lifetime. There is one last perspective that brings everything together in a way that feels both grounding and empowering. When you fully accept that habits decide your future, you stop living in reaction mode. You stop being surprised by where you end up. Instead, you begin to see your life as a natural outcome of patterns. This realization removes confusion. It removes the mystery around success and failure. It replaces emotional guessing with logical clarity. If your results are not where you want them to be, you do not need to panic. You examine your habits. If your life feels stable and fulfilling, you understand why. You built systems that support that stability. There is strength in that clarity. It means you are no longer at war with the world. You are in conversation with your own behavior. And here is something profound. Once you shift your focus from chasing outcomes to refining habits, patience becomes easier. You are no longer desperate for immediate change. You trust the process because you understand how compounding works. You know that small improvements, repeated consistently, cannot fail to produce change over time. That trust reduces anxiety. Many people live with constant tension, and that is enough. When you wake up each day with the simple intention to reinforce your chosen habits, you build momentum quietly. You may not feel dramatic progress, but you feel direction. Direction creates confidence. Confidence creates courage. Courage allows you to take opportunities when they appear. This is how habits and so-called luck intersect. Luck may present a door, but courage, built from consistent self-discipline, gives you the strength to walk through it. Without that foundation, opportunity can feel intimidating instead of exciting. That is why habit building is not just about improvement. It is about preparation. You are preparing for opportunities you cannot yet see. You are building skills for challenges that have not yet arrived. You are strengthening character for responsibilities you may one day carry. Preparation often feels unrewarded in the moment, but it is never wasted. Every hour spent learning sharpens your thinking. Every disciplined financial decision strengthens your security. Every workout builds resilience. Every difficult conversation handled maturely strengthens your emotional intelligence. Nothing compounds faster than character. And character, once built, influences every area of life. Another important realization is that you do not need to compare your pace to anyone else's. Everyone begins from a different starting point. Everyone faces different constraints. But habits equalize the field over time. Because no matter where you begin, consistent effort closes gaps. Maybe not overnight, but steadily. And steady progress is often more reliable than sudden leaps. There is also a quiet satisfaction that comes from living this way. You stop feeling like life is happening to you. You feel like you are shaping it. Even when challenges arise, you approach them with structure instead of panic. You ask yourself simple questions. What habit needs to improve here? What pattern is creating this result? What small adjustment can I repeat daily? These questions are powerful because they lead to action instead of complaint. And action, repeated, changes identity. Identity, once changed, transforms destiny. At some point, you may realize that the biggest transformation was not external. It was internal. You became more disciplined, more patient, more thoughtful, more consistent. Those qualities reshape how you see the world. You begin to value long-term peace over short-term excitement. You begin to value steady growth over fast validation. You begin to value responsibility over blame. And that shift changes everything. The world may still be unpredictable, but you are not. You are steady. You are intentional. You are disciplined. And over decades, that steadiness builds a life that feels solid. When you look back, you may not remember every single habit you built. You may not remember the early mornings or the small sacrifices, but you will live inside their results. In your health, in your stability, in your relationships, in your mindset. You will see that nothing was accidental. It was layered. It was repeated. It was chosen. So as this reflection comes to its natural close, carry one clear understanding with you. You do not need perfect conditions. You do not need extraordinary luck. You do not need sudden transformation. You need consistency. You need alignment. You need patience. And most of all, you need awareness of what you repeat. Because what you repeat becomes who you are, and who you are becomes the life you live. That is the quiet truth beneath everything. Habits decide your future, and every single day gives you another opportunity to decide your habits. As we arrive at the final stretch of this journey, there is a calm realization that settles in. Nothing magical was ever required. No extraordinary stroke of luck. No perfect starting point. No flawless execution. What was required, and what has always been required, is conscious repetition. When you think about it deeply, the future is simply a mirror held up to your daily behavior. It reflects back whatever you consistently practice. If you practice discipline, it reflects strength. If you practice distraction, it reflects instability. If you practice growth, it reflects progress. If you practice avoidance, it reflects stagnation. The mirror does not lie. It does not exaggerate. It simply multiplies. And multiplication is powerful. One small disciplined act does not look impressive, but multiply it by hundreds of days. Multiply it by years. Suddenly, it becomes transformation. The same is true for neglect. One careless day means little, but repeated often enough, it becomes a pattern. and patterns become reality. This understanding removes the illusion that life, if you feed it patience, it returns stability. And this response is slow enough that many people miss it. They expect instant cause and effect. But life often works through delayed rewards. That delay is what tests commitment. When results do not appear immediately, you are forced to rely on belief in the process. You are forced to act without applause. And that is where real maturity develops. Maturity is choosing long-term peace over short-term excitement. Maturity is doing what is necessary without waiting to feel inspired. Maturity is understanding that small improvements, sustained, outperform dramatic bursts of effort. Once this mindset becomes natural, your entire relationship with time changes. You stop racing. You stop comparing. You stop panicking about quick results. You begin thinking in decades rather than weeks. And when you think in decades, discipline feels lighter. Because you understand that steady progress is enough. There is no urgency to prove yourself in a single moment. There is only the responsibility to show up consistently. This is where freedom quietly appears. Freedom is not the absence of structure. It is the presence of self-control. When you control your habits, you control your impulses. When you control your impulses, you control your direction. And when you control your direction, you reduce regret. Regret often comes from knowing you could have acted differently but didn't. Habits protect you from that regret. They make the right action automatic. They reduce internal battles. They simplify decisions. Over years, that simplicity creates peace. You begin to trust yourself deeply. You know that when challenges arise, you will not collapse. You will respond. When opportunities appear, you will not hesitate out of fear. You will step forward, prepared. This preparedness is not loud. It is quiet confidence. The kind that does not need validation because it is built on evidence. Evidence of consistency. Evidence of discipline. Evidence of growth. And when others see the results, they may call it good fortune. They may say you were in the right place at the right time. They may assume things came together easily. But you will know better. You will know about the days no one saw. The choices no one applauded. The routines no one celebrated. The corrections you made when you slipped. The patience you practiced when progress felt slow. You will know that what looks like luck is often long-term alignment. At the deepest level, this philosophy is not about ambition. It is about responsibility. It is about accepting that your daily patterns matter more than your occasional dreams. It is about realizing that wishing without repetition is powerless. Dreams inspire direction. Habits create movement. And movement, sustained, creates change. If there is one final takeaway to carry forward, let it be this: you do not need to control everything in your life to build something meaningful. You only need to control what you repeat. Protect your mornings. Guard your focus. Invest your energy wisely. Return quickly when you drift. Think long-term. Act daily. That is enough. Time will do the rest. Because time is neutral. It amplifies whatever you give it. If you give it discipline, it multiplies progress. If you give it inconsistency, it multiplies chaos. So give it something worthy. Give it habits that reflect the life you want. And trust that even when results are invisible, they are accumulating. One day, you will look around and see a life that feels intentional rather than accidental. A life that feels stable rather than fragile. A life that reflects your values rather than your impulses. And in that moment, you will understand something very simple and very powerful. Luck may influence moments, but habits, patiently chosen, quietly repeated, consistently protected, decide your future. Now, after walking through every layer of this idea, what remains is something steady and undeniable. The future is not something that surprises you. It is something that reveals what you have been practicing. Every day you rehearse a version of yourself. You rehearse how you respond to pressure. You rehearse how you handle money. You rehearse how you treat your body. You rehearse how you speak to people. You rehearse how you use your time. And whatever you rehearse consistently, if you rehearse discipline, you become disciplined. If you rehearse focus, you become focused. If you rehearse excuses, you become limited. This is not philosophy. It is mechanics. Repetition wires patterns into your nervous system. It lowers resistance. It makes actions easier over time. And what is easy gets repeated. What gets repeated becomes permanent. So the real question has never been whether luck exists. Of course it does. Timing plays a role in life. Circumstances matter. Unexpected doors open. Unexpected setbacks happen. But luck is unstable. Habits are stable. Luck is occasional. Habits are daily. Luck may give you an opportunity. Habits determine whether you can sustain it. And sustaining success is far more important than touching it briefly. Many people experience moments of opportunity they are not prepared for. Without the habits to support growth, they fall back to old patterns. That is why some people rise quickly and fall just as quickly. They change their environment, but not their routines. Real change is internal before it becomes external. When your habits change, your standards change. When your standards change, your decisions change. When your decisions change, your results change. This progression is slow, but it is unstoppable when consistent. And here is something deeply reassuring: you do not need to win every day. You simply need to avoid losing repeatedly. You do not need extreme productivity. You need steady productivity. You do not need radical transformation. You need sustainable adjustment. The danger in modern thinking is the obsession with dramatic success, overnight growth, viral moments, rapid breakthroughs. But what you rarely see are the years of quiet habit formation that made those moments possible. Slow improvement rarely makes headlines, but it builds empires. And more importantly, it builds character. Character is the ultimate compound interest. It influences every conversation, every negotiation, every relationship, every opportunity. It shapes how people trust you. It shapes how you trust yourself. And character is nothing more than repeated behavior under different circumstances. If you are consistent in private, you are strong in public. If you are disciplined in small matters, you are reliable in big ones. Over a lifetime, this consistency creates something rare: credibility. People begin to rely on you. Opportunities gravitate toward you. Stability surrounds you. Not because of luck, but because you have demonstrated, over time, that you can be counted on. That reliability is powerful currency. But beyond external rewards, there is something even more valuable: peace. When your habits align with your values, your mind becomes quieter. You do not carry the weight of constant regret. You do not feel the tension of unfulfilled promises to yourself. You act in alignment with who you claim to be. That alignment creates inner stability. And inner stability makes life lighter. You begin to realize that the goal was never just achievement. It was becoming someone capable of achievement without losing integrity. Someone capable of success without chaos. Someone capable of growth without burnout. That kind of life is not built on luck. It is built on daily structure. And structure is simply chosen repetition. As we close this long reflection, return to something simple. You cannot control everything that happens to you, but you can control what you practice daily. You can control how you start your mornings. You can control how you respond to setbacks. You can control whether you improve slightly or stay stagnant. You can control whether you drift or steer. That control, exercised daily, is more powerful than waiting for perfect circumstances. Years from now, when you look back, you will not see one defining lucky moment. You will see thousands of ordinary days that quietly shaped everything. And you will understand something with absolute clarity. Your future was never built in a single decision. It was built in repetition. It was built in discipline. It was built in small choices that felt insignificant at the time. Habits decided your future, and they always will. So choose them wisely. Repeat them patiently. Protect them fiercely. And let time do what it always does: multiply whatever you consistently give it.